Hey, welcome back to the Anchorage where everything is awesome, and this is Galactic Quest. Hey, welcome back. This is Galactic Quest, and this video series is about a tribute, my tribute, to the Ronald D. Moore iteration of Battlestar Galactica that was produced from 2003 to 2009, and then a couple of DVDs, a couple extra things that were done after that. During the original series, of course, we get to see the Galactica, the big honking Battlestar, which is a very large capital ship of the colonies, and it served two purposes. It was a battleship and an aircraft carrier, all together into one. So it was part of the colonial navy of space, and but throughout the series, it's like, first season, second season, third season, some of the third season. It's all we ever saw was, the Galactica, and then we got to see a newer ship that was the Pegasus. The Galactica, we didn't actually know what the class of the ship was because you never saw any multiple vessels that were colonial military. We kind of see something as a smaller aspect on Caprica in the miniseries, but of course there's really no identification of it. You have to check out Battlestar Wiki, which I'm a patron of, the beast, as we call it, that was the Pegasus. That they called the beast because it was twice the size of Galactica. The thing was ginormous, and it actually had production facilities for manufacturing Vipers, and I would assume Raptors, but Vipers, the fighter craft. And we're going to be looking at two different vessels, and one is a Battlestar that I have that I've actually affectionately called the AnKorage, without the part. It's just AnKorage, AnKorage, and it happens to be a Battlestar that we don't get to see in the series until the third season. Hence, part of the third season, we didn't know that there were any other Battlestars outside of the Pegasus, and so we got to see one in the episode Hero, and in this episode, a guy goes by the call sign of Bulldog. I think I remember his name, but I won't go with that. However, the Battlestar is this guy. This is what they called in this show. It was the Battlestar Valkyrie. The Valkyrie, nod out to the Vikings or the Old Norse. They're not gods or goddesses. They're kind of like angels of battle. So whenever there was a slain warrior, Viking warrior, the Valkyries would come down and determine which people that had given their lives were actually worthy of Valhalla. And what they would do is they would take their spirits out of their bodies, of course, and escort them to Valhalla. And so this was in that episode called the Valkyrie, and it's affectionately called. However, about the actual Battlestar class, there is no class per se. So because it was, we've only seen, in canon, the Valkyrie, they affectionately called this type of Battlestar the Valkyrie type. And we don't get to see a whole lot of it. We see it in Hero, which was Commander Adama's previous command before Galactica. And this type is actually much smaller than the actual Galactica. Still a very large craft. It is a Battlestar, so it's a carrier and a battleship in one, but it was much smaller, about half the size of Galactica, and it's got the characteristics of it. You've got in the front, this front section here was called the alligator head, and this is on all Battlestars of this appearance. The front was the alligator head, which is where all of the major operational facilities are. The CIC, which was commonly what we commonly known as the bridge. The CIC, which is the Combat Information Center or Command Information Center, one or the other, whatever you feel more comfortable with. And then you have a little neck area here. And then you've got the main body in the center, and then you've got these two pieces on the sides. These sections on the sides are the flight pods. These are the parts that make it an aircraft carrier. That houses a runway, and then you have a deck below that, which would be your hangar deck, and then below that would be the actual launch tubes on this one here. On Galactica, the hangar deck and the launch tubes were on the same deck, and the deck below that would be some more infrastructure and things of that sort. And then on the outer edges, you'd have all of the AAA cannons. Yeah, that's the best I could do it. That would be like your anti-aircraft artillery. That's AAA. That would be full of all that. Now on the Valkyrie type, it's much smaller. You do have a similar layout. You have your runway area on the top. You have your flight deck area, which is your hangar deck, where all the aircraft are stored and repaired and maintained. And then below that, a deck below, isn't actually, let's say, a deck per se. It's actually the launch tubes. Now on Galactica, and I'll hold it this way, Galactica, you would have your launch tubes and they'd shoot out straight out. It doesn't make that sound, but that's kind of like the effect. However, on the Valkyrie type, there's only 3 tubes per flight pod, and they're on the bottom here, and they run lengthwise. So when and there's 3 spots where what would happen is the Vipers would be lowered into the tube and launched from that point, and they would be loaded at 3 separate spots, one towards the front, not at the front but towards it, and then in the center and in the back. And we can see that with the tubes here, so that you could actually get more craft launched in a shorter period of time. So you'd launch one, bang, second one, bang, and third one, boom. And just for flight operations, and this is just from my logical approach on it, would be they wouldn't launch all 3 at the same time. They would launch in sequence with a gap in between to allow for the craft to exit the tube and break away from the ship, and then the next one would go, much like today's aircraft carriers. But of course, on today's aircraft carriers, the space is a lot more, it's a lot more confined, and you literally can only launch one aircraft at a time on these catapults. That's why you ever see one go, and then it flies off, and then another one goes, and then that one flies off. And the large super carriers that we have, I believe, have 4 catapults. 2 in the front, which is very synonymous. And then you've got two more back on the landing strip that are pretty much right side by side. And so there's that. So this is the Valkyrie type, and then in the far back you've got the engineering section, and where all of your engine controls are and everything like that, and your faster than light drive, or FTL, faster than light drive systems would be back here as well. And so that is this Battlestar. This one in particular, I purchased from a gentleman. He's in New Mexico. This is a 3D print, and it's very clear that this thing was printed standing straight up like this, because all of the filament lines that are on it are, the horizontal, and they would be on a 3D print, and then you'd sand them smooth and stuff like that. And when I looked at it, it came in its primered gray, and I saw all those lines and everything. I'm like, I really don't need to sand this. That would be fruitless. It's really not much of a point. And with what I was going to do is I was going to paint it this chalkboard paint black, and they don't show up as bad. I mean, he's like, yeah, if you look real close, yeah, you can see something, but when you're looking at it from a little distance, you can't tell, And this model specifically, the 3D print used what they call STL files. So STL, I believe, would be the file extension for the model, the file number, or the file extension. And so the guy doesn't own the STL files, or he didn't create them. Somebody else created them. And so he mentions that on his Etsy page. And by putting that on there, basically exonerates him from any problems with it. He's basically saying, these aren't my files, and therefore what you get is what you get. And that's the end of it. If you don't like it, hey, you can send it back, whatever. When I received this in the mail, I noticed that the center launch tube on the port or left flight pod appeared broken, because the tube wasn't completely there. And another similar thing on the starboard or right flight pod regarding that launch tube. Not the center one, but the innermost center launch tube. Where it looked like pieces had broken off. And I looked in the box and I didn't see any broken pieces. And if they were there, I wouldn't have cared. I would have just taken them and I would have glued them back on and everything happy honky-dory. But there was nothing there. So that told me that this model was actually 3D printed as is. And he's like, well, the STL files aren't mine, and I just printed from those. And if you want it, you can send it back. And I'm like, no, I don't really care about that. This is going to be a display piece, and the important parts, when it's being displayed, are being shown. I don't care. So I went ahead and I did the spray paint of the chalkboard paint, and then I went back over and I used a Q-tip, and I got an olive drab color paint. And I did the front of the flight pods, the center areas, a couple of details, and then back on the engines, the front sections. Now, the overall design of this model is it's close to the actual design that was used in the production, but it's not correct completely. It's about, I'd say about 90% correct to that model, and but in the end, I don't care. It looks like a Valkyrie type, and I like that, and I picked this one specifically because of Valkyrie. From the Old Norse or the Vikings. I picked it because of that, and it looked really nice. I like the design. The Valkyrie type from Battlestar, being smaller, when you look at the, not so much data sheet, but if you look at the page on Battlestar Wiki, it's described as the workhorse of the Colonial Fleet. And I'm like, that's really fitting because this home is a workhorse of today's society. And so a little bit of a parallel there. So I'm like, hey, that applies. And as far as the name Anchorage goes, I picked Anchorage because the name of the home is named after Ragnar Station in the miniseries, which was affectionately named Ragnar AnKorage. And of course, the spelling, I changed it. Instead of ANCH, I spelled it with a K instead of the CH. And what I did was I just on a regular printer paper, just printed the name inverted. And then what I did was I took some Elmer's glue and then I watered it down pretty good. So it was almost kind of like milky water. And then I took that Q-tip and I basically got the paper cut out to the size I needed it, cut it to size, and then got it all soaking wet with this water glue mixture and carefully placed it in its spot on the flight pods. And that looks fantastic. And then on the inside of the flight pods, on both the fronts and the backs, you can see the beginning of a runway or a landing strip. And what I did is I did the same method with printer paper. But what I had to do is I actually had to draw it out in a graphics program. I just use a generic paint-like program just to draw it out in general, and then put in text of Battlestar Group, which is 17 or 17, as we would say in the aviation world. We don't actually say 17, 25, 47, 72. We would say the individual numbers 1, 7, 4, 2, 7, 5, and so on. 3 digits. 1, 5, 6, and so on. So this is the Battlestar AnKorage from Battlestar Group 17. And I was careful on picking that Battlestar Group number because Galactica is from Battlestar Group 75. And I could be wrong. I think Pegasus was 42 or something like that, or 39 or something. No, the Triton was from 39. Excuse me. And so Triton was a Galactica size, capital ship, or could have been a Mercury class, because that's what was Pegasus. It was a Mercury class. In the class of Galactica, of course, we never really heard of it and stuff like that. But one of the production crew during some sort of video production that they did actually called it a Jupiter class. So there we go. So Galactica is Jupiter class. The Beast is Pegasus is actually Mercury class, and Valkyrie doesn't have a class. So everyone just says it's a Valkyrie type because that's what we recognize it. So we see Valkyrie in that episode Hero. We also get to see the Valkyrie itself pop back up in, I believe it was The Plan, which was a DVD that was created after the series ended. And just a quick little thing. You get to see a Valkyrie type getting blown up and the back end rolling up and over in the attack of Scorpion Dockyards, or Scorpion Yards, where that it was attacked by Cylons in the big attack, and that is where Pegasus broke away from and did a blind jump away from. And during the attack, we get to see a Battlestar getting attacked, and we get to see the engines come up and get, it explodes here in this section, and this section just blows up and over. And that is a Valkyrie type that I've been able to ascertain from my observations. So it was fantastic. So that is this guy. And of course, as you saw at the very beginning at the intro, and in many videos before this, you see I keep it up on the shelf above my desk. So yeah, that's where I keep it on display. So this is the token Battlestar for the home. So we will now look at my next ship. All right, my next ship is not necessarily a ship, but it is a fighter. It is a Viper. And so I had purchased this off of eBay, and I have information here. I printed out so I can keep it with the box. Let's see if I can get down to the details of it. We shall go over it. Of course, I have to scroll down on what does it actually say? Well, I've got the pictures. This was purchased out of, let's see, it's titled the Viper Mark III Blood and Chrome Battlestar Galactica Eagle Moss Spaceship New. Okay. Yeah, we're going to go over that. I have no doubt that it's new because there's no evidence on the actual model that it was used or anything like that. And if you happen to hear any weird noises, that is my neighbor upstairs vacuuming. And let's see, shop. This came up from Brazil, and they've got a 99.7 positive feedback. 29,000 items sold. Now, the interesting thing about this, here we go, way in the back. Finally got to the details. This came up from Sao Paulo in Brazil, that area, and this is by Eagle Moss Collections. They do figurines and things of that sort, and it's advertised as brand new sealed ship from Eagle Moss, Brazil. Okay, let's talk about sealed. Yes, it was, the shipping box was sealed. The item box inside the shipping box was not sealed. In the collector's market, from everything that I've seen, a sealed item is the actual item box has plastic wrap surrounding it, sealing it in. This doesn't have that. Therefore, based on the collector's market, it's not sealed. But the shipping box was. It was taped. It came up FedEx. So, okay. And it says here, Eagle Moss released this exclusive limited edition metal spaceship inspired by the classic Battlestar Galactica multiverse. It is a miniature replica of the Viper Mark III Blood and Chrome ship and has become a rare collector's piece. Well, I can't say anything regarding whether or not it's actually rare or not. Yeah, there aren't many of them out there in general. But it also mentions that it's metal. So, about half of it is metal, and I can tell. And I'll actually show you in a moment. And let's see, we get our items directly from Eagle Moss, Brazil. So the shop itself isn't Eagle Moss itself, but it might be affiliated with it. The ship is brand new. Okay, it says sealed in the original box. No. And includes the original magazine. Yes, and I have that. And it gives dimensions. 12 and 3/4 inches, or 32.5 centimeters, long by 9.5 inches, 24 centimeters wide. The model is not those dimensions. Those are the dimensions of the box. You know, the product box. The actual length, and that's the only one I've got so far. The actual length of the actual model is about 8.5 inches. So, mint, never displayed metal ship. Yeah, I'll take that. Hand painted, and yeah, it's pretty hand painted, and you know, the base coat is a gunship gray. That's sprayed on. That's, you know, of course, sprayed on by hand, whatever. But all of the other details on it are done by hand as much as possible. There's a couple that could use stencils, namely the nose number and the tail number. And you know, your lines and stuff like that, those are probably stencils. And but the effects appear to be dry brushed, and yeah, not too bad. Slightly darker gray to give a little bit of weathering, which is fine. It does not show evidence that any of that dry brushing was taken back. And if you look at Tested, look at Adam Savage, and he describes the process. You take the dry brush, you take a little bit, you dry brush it, so that you've only got a little bit left, and you just flow on it, and then you take it back by taking another rag and just wiping it back off. And so you go in with it, putting it on, and then you take it back by removing some of it. Putting it on was done. The taking it back wasn't done. So, but you know, what they did put on was decent enough. So I'm not complaining about that. And then it just talks about shipping and stuff like that. No big deal. This was delivered via FedEx, and I got it within 3 or 4 days. It was fantastic. I'm up in New Hampshire, so I'm in the far northeast of the contiguous 48 states. Way up in the northeast there. Just north of the little hook thing, that's Cape Cod, so I'm a little north of that. So there we go. And so, why don't I show it? It actually comes with a stand, and I'm going to show the stand first. This is the stand right here. And it's 2 pieces. You've got this neck piece and the actual seating area. And then you have the bottom part, which has a velvet bottom, velvet-like bottom, that says Viper Blood and Chrome, trademark, and 2021 Universal. Okay, so this probably came out in 2021, 2 years ago. Oh, okay, fine. And then you have the actual ship, and here it is. Excuse me. This is the actual fighter right here, and it's, you know, the Vipers that we see in the show are Viper Mark IIs. They are actually smaller than what I have here. This is from Blood and Chrome, which is a larger craft, and it's girthier, it's got more meat to it, it's larger than the Mark IIs, and it is a more believable aircraft, or spacecraft. Okay. Either or. It can fly in both space and in the atmosphere, much like the Mark IIs. A noticeable difference in the back is with the engines. You've got 2 large engines, and then the top one, or the number 2 engine, is actually a little bit smaller. It's a nice little touch, you know, nothing really big. Gives it its own uniqueness to it. And the fuselage is, of course, wider than the Mark IIs, and it's beefier. It's got more bulk to it, adding, you know, and that's just adding to the authenticity of what we see on screen. And they are very much larger. Now, the differences, my differences that I identify the Mark II and the Mark III, is the Mark II was smaller, and it could fit in the set for the hangar deck, because the hangar deck was only about maybe 120 feet long or so, and then they had green screens on either end so that you could actually see a longer stretch of the hangar bay going, throughout the length of the flight pod, and that was cool and everything like that. In Blood and Chrome, these could be triple stacked in the bay. We had one on the floor, one above that, and then a third one even above that. And that is just for the production. What you could actually do that is actually more believable is have them double stacked, because when you're in the TV show set, and you can look up to an upper deck area with a walkway, and that is like where this would be, one of these would be stacked up there. But of course, we never see anything actually stacked, because it would cost too much in production costs, and especially to have the elevator system and stuff like that for them. But they made the room necessary, which they could have been used for, which would be a lot more believable. Now, the actual general size between the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs. The Mark IIs was, of course, smaller, so they could fit on the set, fit into the tube launch areas, and stuff like that. The Mark III, this guy, is what they, from everything that I've read, this is the actual model design that they wanted to use in the TV production, but they couldn't because of the size difference. This thing is gigantic. If you were to take a comparison of these sets to today's aircraft, or vehicles in general, the Mark IIs, I call them the Porsche 911s. They're small, they're nimble, they're cute, they're pretty. They do the job. And the Mark IIIs are larger, taller, longer, wider, bulkier. They are more suited to be comparable to a McDonnell Douglas F4, which is actually my favorite fighter jet. It's bigger than an F-16. The Mark IIs could be an F-16. It's smaller, nimbler, and highly usable, but there's not much to them. And the Mark IIs, there's not much to them. The Mark IIIs, given their size and stuff like that, they, it's a more believable craft, more believable design, and it's funny. The nose number of this model is 407. Now, if you go into Blood and Chrome and you look at the CGI models in there, every single one has the nose number of 407, and every single tail number is 579er011. I say niner, I'm a pilot, so we say 9 as niner. So we can definitely tell that niner means 9. And we don't say 579011. No, we don't say 11. We say 11. And they do that in the show too. So they've been accurate, because it's a military type thing. And every CGI model in Blood and Chrome is that tail number and that nose number, and that nose number appears up here at the nose, on the back of the starboard wing, and on the bottom of the fuselage. Now, I mentioned before, in the details in here, that it is a metal model. Okay, and I said kinda, or no, or something like that. Partly. Part of it is metal. The top fuselage is metal. And you can do that just by snapping your finger on it. You can hear it. It's kind of like a dense metal, stuff like that. It's die cast, evidently. And however, what's not metal? The wings, the engines, the vertical stabilizer, and the bottom fuselage. So basically, the bottom fuselage is plastic, the wings are plastic, the engines are plastic, the vertical stabilizer is plastic, Well, the vertical stabilizer is plastic because it's part of the number 2 engine cowling. And the actual exposed engine parts, those are plastic as well. So the only thing metal on here is the top half of the fuselage. That's it. So in this, let me scroll this back to the details. Excuse me a minute. I'm sorry. Of course, I got that. Blah, blah, blah. It's become rare colors. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Well, it says in here that it's metal. What they're trying to say is the entire thing is metal. It's not entirely metal. So that is, I won't say wrong, but I'll say vastly inaccurate. It is a combination of metal and plastic. The top fuselage is metal. The canopy, the engine cowling, the wings, the under portion of the fuselage, all of that is plastic. So, but the details of it are fantastic. And, you know, it's obviously new because, you know, there's no evidence of any wear or tear on it. And there's no bending in any of the control surfaces, and or any bending in the guns on the tips here. And so there we go. So, and then with this, it cradles very nicely right on there, and it sits nice just like that. So there we go. So that is my Viper Mark III. Now, why did I pick this specific model? I like something to be something that's more believable, more accurate to how it would actually be if it was actually made, and they did so in blood and chrome, and especially with the paint and with the overall dimensions of the craft, and that's what I find fascinating about it and find interesting for me. So, and I gave the review on eBay as 4 stars. And that's out of a possible 5 stars. I gave it 4 stars because of the inaccuracies. You know, was it fully metal? Excuse me a moment while I try to look on here. Blah blah blah. Replica. Brand new steel original box. Yeah, let's see. It's brand new. Yeah. Sealed in the original box. No, it's not sealed. So, right there, you lose part of a star. The dimensions it provides are wrong / inaccurate. So you lose a little bit more of a star on that. And it's advertised as being metal, and it is a combination metal and plastic, so you lose the rest of the star on that. So you get 4 stars. It is an excellent model. It's pretty much equates to a desktop model that we see of aircraft and stuff like that. You know, like my father's airline models. I've got an A300, I've got a 727. I need to get one of my own of the aircraft that I was, which was a Piper Warrior, and I'll say I'm officially in the market for one of those. So I'm gonna try to find one, and I'll put that up with my models, my father's models, and this one will go on the same shelf as the Battlestar, and it's an excellent model. It's actually worth the cost that I paid for it. Nearly. And I'll say it's, you know, I purchased it at the cost of $200. And the prices I was seeing were like $230 in that realm, stuff like that, for the same model. And this was the cheapest one out of the bunch. So I don't know if that cheapness, the reasons for it being cheaper, happen to be the fact that, you know, the inaccuracies of the advertising and stuff like that. But, you know, that's not for me to be concerned about, so I don't care. I'd say that the overall value of this, for being the actual value of it, would probably be about somewhere between $150 and $175 US. And that anything beyond that is a cash grab. And that makes sense because, you know, the business does have overhead that it has to compensate for: storage, selling, marketing, everything like that. So I understand it. Don't necessarily agree with it completely, but I understand it, and there we have it. If I could get it for less, I would certainly have paid less. But because of the availability of the Mark III out there isn't much availability, so therefore I had to come up on that. I had to go ahead and pay the extra. So that's what I did there. So we are going to put this back on the stand. I'm going to set it here on the table, and then I'll come back and we'll end this. Okay, so we are going to end this with my third one, which in the grand scheme of things was my actual first ship model, which happens to be my Viper Mark II. This was gifted to me at Icon in 2009 by Donner Strike. Icon is held every year down on the south end of, I think it was the south. No, it was in the middle section of Long Island at a college. And it was funny because Nikki Klein, or Callie, as we know from Battlestar, was there, and she was sitting at a table, and I was there helping Donner Strike and a couple other friends. They were vending, so they were selling things with their own little personal store of sorts. And I was in direct eye shot of Callie, Nikki, and she saw me. I could tell because, I would occasionally look over and just see if she was busy. She was sitting at the table. She hardly had any visitors and stuff like that. I should have gone over. I never did because, bashful. I was going through the series with Donner Strike, and I pointed her out and everything like that. And Donner Strike didn't quite catch on. Or she couldn't think of it because, her mind was on other things. She was actually on, she was working. So that makes sense. It's completely understandable. But, we had some free time and took a lot of free time and stuff like that, and wandered around, checked out the other vendors, stuff like that. But Nikki was there. The actor that played Sauron from Lord of the Rings was there. Big black dude. And he's the kindest guy out there. He was fantastic. Someone from the original Lost in Space was there, and the big guest was Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings, and the stage for that was right on the back side of where the other three were sitting, and when he came up, we want to talk about yay, the crowd and everything. So that was cool. But Donner Strike went around and she found this Viper Mark II. It's a cute little guy, and it's the Mark II, and it's a resin cast, and it's white. Of course, it yellowed a little bit since I've owned it, but you can actually see the differences between the Mark IIs and the Mark IIIs. It's thinner, and it's the number 2 engine is that actually goes right along line with the Mark IIIs. Number 2 is actually smaller than number 1 and 3. Number 1 would be on the starboard side, I think. Well, actually, no. It would actually be on the port side. And number 3 is on the starboard side. But, it's smaller. It's like a Porsche 911 or an F-16. Or actually, even more accurate, a T-38 or an F-5. Because those were made by the same company. And they're small, nimble suckers. And you can see them if you look at the original film for Top Gun, the enemy MiGs were these F5s. And, small, nimble little suckers. And great little planes. And they're actually used, the T-38 is actually used by NASA for astronaut training. At least they should still be. We may have other aircraft now, but I think the T-28s are still being flown. The T means training. F means fighter. Still same. P means pursuit. B means bomber. U means utility. U2, utility. SR, the R is reconnaissance. I don't remember the S itself. It's been so long. So there's the letters in in the aircraft naming, military aircraft naming of things. C, cargo. C-47, C-5, C-135, KC-135. K means refueler or tanker. K in the word tanker. There you go. All right. KC-150, KC-97. I could go through all kinds of aircraft, and I've seen all of these aircraft at the Air Force Museum, or the Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio, at Wright Field. So I may have another video about that in the future, but got my little Mark II. It's not. I haven't finished it off. I haven't painted it or anything like that. It does require some finish work, trimming off some flashing and stuff from the mold, and painting. And of course, it's been since '09. I haven't done it yet. I plan to. I just don't know when that plan is. I mean, it is very small, so I'd have to get in there with my glasses on and stuff like that. There's indents at the cockpit area on the model, which isn't accurate to the actual production set piece or prop. Those indents shouldn't be there, but they are. But I'm not gonna complain about that. It's a very nice little model, and I'd like to put that on display at some point after I finish it up. And there we go. There we go. So that was this video regarding ships and models and stuff like that, craft vessels from my Battlestar Galactica collection. So I hope you like them, and so give this video a like, throw a comment down below. I'd appreciate it. Going out to PixelFed. Check out any of my other stuff that's going out there, which at this point is on Metapixel, and the address is down below. And please give a donation in crypto if you wish to do so, and I would certainly appreciate it. And although you don't have to, which I've had this channel for two and a half years, and I haven't received a single bit of donations. But that's just me. I'm just saying. No one has yet, so I don't expect anybody to in the near future. But it's there should anybody want to. So it doesn't matter one way or another. So there we go. So that was this episode of Galactic Quest. Please join me in the future for the next episode of Galactic Quest. Who knows what it's going to be about? Excuse me. I've got a few episodes lined up. I just need to decide which one. So there we go. So thank you very much. We'll catch you in the next one. Skál.